welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duville, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man who finds himself looking at every visible surface to see if there's an eye staring back at him from there.
Tim Longo.
Yeah, you shoot a lot of eyes. You've been shooting a lot of eyes, I bet.
Yeah, that was cool. That was not a mechanic from the regular game, right? He those eyes were are they always shootable? And I just missed them.
I don't know if they are.
I remember seeing them.
Talk about what we're talking about, but
let's do that.
We're talking about this week. It's a bonus episode around Doom. We're doing a few. This first one is about the fourth episode of Ultimate Doom, which came out after the original three games that were part of the first shareware release, and then also Sigil, a megawad, a series of levels made by John Romero in honor of Doom's 25th anniversary, which is of course also partly why we're playing it. We're talking about the eyes and Sigil. I think there are things that you can shoot in the original. That's not a new technology or anything like that. That obviously he's not changing the source, right? So you could shoot things and trigger, right? Basically,
I remember shooting things. Yeah, it was just those eyes specifically. I remember seeing them, and I think I even would shoot at them. But I ultimately decided that I thought they were just decorations.
Yeah, they probably were. I think there's more of that in Doom 2. Doing more of that kind of puzzly, or find the thing, find the secret by shooting a thing, and those sorts of things. I think that comes in a little bit more later. But now I'm second guessing myself. I'm not really sure. I didn't find all the secrets by any means, playing it at the speed that we did. Though I found a lot more of them when I originally played. Anyway, let's start with Thy Flesh Consumed, though, because that's that sort of ties in with the original game and is contemporaneous roughly with it. You were telling me a little bit beforehand about how it who contributed to it and stuff like that. You want to lay that out?
Yeah. I was just doing a little bit of reading up on on that because the previous episodes of the series we definitely would hit on kind of who the main level designers and contributors were to each of the chapters or episodes rather. And as it turns out, Tim, this Thy Flesh Consumed was Tim Willett's first contribution to the series. He was joining id at the time after Doom, the main game had shipped, and of course he had been there ever since and just recently left actually. So he stuck around longer than anyone else. And I don't know, he ended up being, I don't know, studio head or something when he left.
Yeah, he was basically studio head.
Yeah. So So but it looks like, I don't know who Kevin Cloud is. I will admit his name pops up too, but John Romero was also involved with this last episode. It's not specific about who did what level though, or how that worked. But anyway, I think. I don't know where I read a description someplace about, it might have even just been in the Steam store, where they talk about Thy Flesh Consumed being intentionally more difficult, than the previous three episodes, and kind of a real nail biter as far as like that, that hardcore difficulty goes. It
should be noted that Kevin Cloud is actually still there and is the executive producer now. So
there you go
on the Doom stuff. So
just good for Kevin. Yeah. He started in '92, so he'd been around for a while. And he started on the art side, it sounds like. So
yep, he was an artist.
But I mean, it doesn't disappoint when it comes to difficulty. I mean, I don't remember the order of some of these events, but even the first, I feel like the first level, there's a moment when like they spawn a Baron right next to you or something like that.
Yeah. Well, he's in this hallway that you can't see, But when you pass by an entryway where you could be able to see him, it's all shadow in there. It'd be difficult to see him anyway. You kind of come around, and then they start moving towards where you are because they've activated, because they've seen you, and they start moving into this teleporter, which takes them, but just them, because that teleporter doesn't work on you when you're in there, which is another kind of weird wrinkle, and puts them out where you are. So you suddenly have a lot more enemies to deal with, plus a few that were placed. So you're just, yes, it's there's a lot. I mean, it starts with that. It starts with, oh, I'm behind. There's a shotgun ahead of me, so I can pick that up. But as soon as I step into that next area, more guys are going to start teleporting in. I'm not even sure where from, and I'm immediately dealing with a lot of shotgun sergeants and imps. And I really appreciated the pace of this, like how just pell-mell and ruthless you had to be. What difficulty level did you play it on?
I played it on the same one that I played the rest of it, so it's the the one right below the default.
Oh, okay, yeah, I played it at the default again.
Yeah, and it was still difficult, for sure. Of course, I don't know the enemy differences, but there were definitely barons thrown in there. So, and yeah, I agree with you on the pacing. Like, in fact, some of the level design specifically sort of forced you to move more quickly than you're used to. It felt like, you know what I mean? That you kind of like it just perpetuated you forward. And perpetuated. That's not the right word I'm looking for.
It's really not. Yeah, propelled you forward.
Propelled.
Maybe?
There you go. Yeah. Propelled. Thank you, Mr. Dictionary. Propelled you really forward, and they were starting to really understand. I think probably with a lot of play testing and feedback, and just because the first 3 episodes had been so popular and so many people had played them, they started to really exploit what the level design, boundaries were. The other note, let me look at my notes really quick. The other note that I wrote down was, let's see. So, there's sort of a bit of an advanced technique in the first 3 episodes that isn't necessarily used on the critical path. I don't think ever, but if so, it was very infrequent, where if you're moving very quickly, you essentially sort of jump over a gap, right? You don't have jump, but you.
It's definitely used in this.
No, in this, that's what I mean. But
it's not used in the original. Right. Yeah,
I don't.
Not on critical path. There might have been something, but I think the gaps were pretty minor, so you'd have to really work to, like, I think even moving normal speed, you might be able to get across them. You just have a moment of like drop, which feels a little creepy or scary. No, it definitely wasn't a thing. I think the way that it helps propel you forward is that there's a lot of open sight lines where you're targeted. So you have to move across areas quickly. I think that especially in the first few levels, which is mostly what I played, maybe the first 4 or 5, even that first area, like you step out and there's now a bunch of things. Well, okay, you probably pull back and kind of try to pick them off and poke around corners, but then you've got to run across because there's also some enemies who can shoot at you from off to the right that you can't even see. All you know is that if you go there, you start getting worked again. So you run across to where the imps are, but now you've got to deal with the imps. There's a whole bunch of them, and you've got to just tackle them all right away. It's 4 or 5 or whatever. Right. So it's really those like hidden sight lines that you only know that you're taking damage from over there that you have to deal with, and then it really nicely kind of pushes you back and forth in that level, for example. So yeah, super interesting.
Yeah, the jumping over gaps sort of emergent mechanic I wanted to mention for sure, because it's a really good example of, probably with again, not having that built into level design in the first 3 episodes explicitly, but they probably discovered that along the way through development and through, watching other people play. And, and probably if you watch, I haven't had a chance to watch any speed runs of these levels. It'd be interesting to see. But, at some point, somebody discovered, probably them, that there is this sort of pseudo jump if you are moving really quickly, because it's a physics-based movement model. And so you can, propel yourself over those gaps and kind of simulate a jump, even though they didn't have a jump. And I just thought it was really cool that discovery ended up being a core part of a lot of the levels in Thy Flesh Consumed. And so it is, to your point, there is a moment of, it takes your breath away for a moment where you gasp, it's like, am I going to make it? And also they really ratcheted up the death surfaces, whether it be, nuclear waste or lava or blood or whatever the red one is, and so it's almost always combined with that. So there's a lot more surgical movement necessary for staying on ledges, sometimes thin ledges. Yeah. And then John even ratchets that up even more in Sigil, which we'll talk about later. But and I just, you can see it's fun to play this in this succession. I didn't do the research on when how much longer Thy Flesh Consumed came out after the original game. Do you know that?
I do not, but I'll look and see when Ultimate.
It'd be interesting to know because they're definitely learning and evolving their own level design, and I'm sure Doom 2.
95. It was 95.
Okay.
95. So a couple of years.
Yeah, so that's actually quite a ways for this era. And so let's see. Oh, okay. American McGee also was one of the level designers. Anyway, yeah, and so it's cool to see their evolution, right? Where you can see the level design advancing and taking advantage of the discoveries that they've had with the first 3 episodes and all the playing. And then they're like, and that's a good sign. That's a good sign of developers really dissecting what they're doing and pushing themselves and not kind of falling back on the habits they've had before. And so that was cool. And it made, to be honest, like by the end of the 3rd episode of the main game, I'm not going to say that I was bored by any means, but I definitely got into a rhythm that was kind of expected, other than some of the bosses and stuff. I didn't feel like I was being surprised very often by the end, probably because we played it so quickly, week after week. But in this episode, I felt like I was being surprised. They were doing interesting, different things that I didn't see coming. So that was cool.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of surprise. There were a lot of moments where I was like, oh, you son of a gun. Like, having those moments of like, oh, it feels like with that engine, they were at the top of their game as far as what they knew how to design, that they had all these kind of weird ideas, and having it continue to be this sort of abstract thing because it bleeds with hell and all that stuff. You can make these weird puzzly levels that don't there's no sort of narrative through line to them. But the cleverness of the way that they use their tools to get you is just, it's just so great. I mean, I was laughing while I was playing that first area, although first I had to get it working properly. I actually had, so the way you play this, if you have the Steam version of Doom, is you get GZ Doom, and copy the wads over to that, and then just play. Well, I didn't know this, but there was a sprite rendering issue because of my ATI drivers.
Oh.
The sprites were not rendering. And I step forward, and there's although I think the hand was. And I step over the shotgun that's there, and the shotgun appears in my hand. I'm like, oh, cool, I didn't see that. But of course I didn't see it. It was rendering. But then I step out into that area, and I'm just getting mauled. I'm like, I'm not even seeing these guys. Where are they shooting me from? Oh, and no. I did it several times till I'm like, wait a minute. no, I can't see the shotgun. This can't be the way this game is supposed to play.
Yeah.
It was very funny because I just legitimately was completely lost. Like, this is really hard. I mean, I heard this was hard, but this is unfair. It turned out to be, I just needed to update my drivers. So that was entertaining.
Oh yeah, well, sprites are pretty important for Doom
in this game. It was very funny. I only identified it because of the lack of the shotgun on the ground. Right. When I loaded in again finally and thought to myself, oh, wait a minute, I didn't see that shotgun. And then I'm like, no, there's no shotgun there. And then I'm like, okay, I gotta, what's going on here?
Yeah.
That was very funny. I had started streaming, so people were watching me, and I'm like, whoa, this is really something. Man, I don't know. I thought I'd just play a couple hours and get a bunch of stuff in, but man, I don't know. Not if it's like this. Oh boy.
You played no sprite mode.
Yeah, that was a tough mode.
Wait, so that was just for Sigil, you're saying? That wasn't for...
No, that was Thy Flesh Consumed, actually. It was just... Well, having installed it and knowing I was going to play, it also plays better with streaming stuff because it handles certain Windows messages correctly that DOSBox does not. So it's actually just easier to play that way.
So when we played the first 3 episodes, you weren't playing on Steam? You're playing some other way?
I was playing on Steam, but okay. I was streaming when I did I even stream that? I might have streamed some of it, but I did it on my laptop. Did we play this at all while I was still there? Maybe 1 week. Anyway, I basically was playing on my laptop. Because I started before I left.
Oh, okay.
And I streamed, so I was set up to stream it on my laptop with a monitor attached, so 2 screens. But I hadn't set it up on my PC in the basement, so I hadn't been doing a lot of streaming. But then I'm like, well, I have to do this thing anyway. I might as well figure out how to do that. And so I streamed both Thy Flesh Consumed and Sigil, which works a lot better in GZ Doom. So
yeah.
But yes, I'm sorry. That was probably not very interesting. Let's get back to talking about the game.
Well, it's fun to think about playing Doom without sprites.
That's true. Fun is maybe not the word I'd use. Psychopathic.
Experiment.
Yeah. Yeah. We've not. That's funny. You say experiment. We've not talked about that at all. How many different sorts of experiments came out of this game? And I feel like I should look some of that stuff up. Maybe I'll put that off to next week. I'm going to make a note of it because I remember this being, because it was open sourced, and ultimately I feel like academics used it for stuff. There was somebody tried to make a nonviolent games in it. Yeah, I'm gonna make a note of this.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't
come up with for that.
Some vague memories of that, but yeah, that'd be interesting.
Another thing.
Talk a little bit about that. Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. But then the other thing you mentioned in pre-show, especially early in the episode, each level, especially the first couple, were very like mini sort of murder puzzles or something. It was like it's like these small levels, fairly small levels compared to some of the others, and you can play them very fast, but there's some tricks to them, and it's kind of like the other thing I appreciate about a couple of them is sort of the retraversal use of space. I did get stuck. You probably didn't get to this level, but did you get to the? No, that was actually maybe one of the later ones. There's this one level. Let me look at the map really quick. Yes, I think it's this one. I think it's and Hell Followed, where there's this central area of a tower that has a teleporter in the tower, and there's an elevator on the 4 basically cardinal sides of that tower. It's a square tower, and I got stuck because I didn't figure out this part of the puzzle until late. If you enter whichever elevator you use to get up to the teleporter at the top of the tower will teleport you to the room behind the way you're facing. And so I thought obviously because they're breaking rules there where teleporters usually take you to one place, right? The one teleporter. So in this case, the same teleporter took you to 4 different places depending on the direction you entered. But the cool thing about that, once I figured that out, is you're now really leveraging and sort of exploiting and manipulating the way this level works, because the floor was lava around the tower, so that added an extra sort of ratcheting up of risk. And so you're basically like jumping down into this lava for as quick, as short of amount of time as possible, using the elevator on the side you need to use, teleporting backwards to the room behind you. And, the keys, of course, are all spread around, with each of these areas. And then the doors are also spread around. So it was a really cool sort of like, if you can imagine the heat map of that level and the pathing that the player takes, you're really retraversing across that central room multiple times and coming in different directions. And once you master it, you feel really cool, and powerful, because you're like, oh, I know what I'm doing now. And you're kind of, master manipulator of the level. So they did a lot more of that kind of clockwork kind of feel here and there. Yeah. And early in the episodes, they were like distilled down versions of that.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't make it as far as that one, whichever one that is. But I definitely felt that a lot more of there being areas that you were returning to again and again. That there was the level with it starts and you've got a shotgun probably from the prior level, and there's a couple of sergeants, and then there's some steps up and gaps that you have to run across. There end up being 3 or 4 barons in this, and there's a cyber demon that fires the rocket launchers, the rockets rather.
Yeah, probably my difficulty. I bet that because I only had a couple cyber demons toward the end. So.
Oh, okay, yeah. So there's a cyber demon, and you keep coming back to this area, right? First, you've got to jump down into the lava, find a suit, and then run back around up some stairs back to where you are. Like you literally just go in this tight little loop. After you've dealt with some imps and cacodemons that are coming at you, as well as these couple of sergeants. But then you go across, you hit a button, you go off to the left, and there's another room where these walls come up, and you go up and into an area where there's a baron. For me, there was a baron. And there's a teleporter, and that takes you back there again. But now you've opened something up, so you have to go back to there to go back inside that. But now you've got this ring that you can run around on. I mean, it's just one thing after another of like just pushing the little bit of level story a little bit further. Like, but now you have to do this here. Oh, but now you have to do this here, which was super, super interesting. And I really enjoyed that stuff. I wonder to what degree Doom 2 felt like it had more of that stuff. I have not played it in a few years, and some of the levels, now that we've been playing these, I'm forgetting some of those. So now I'm like, I wonder if there's any of that in there. But anyway, I thought it was really kind of fantastic that way.
They definitely bleed together, yeah. Yeah, I mentioned it off to the side earlier, but American McGee did a couple of these levels, and then there's another fellow named Sean Green, who also did some of them, and he I guess had done some work on Hexen and was at 3D Realms, and also went on to work on the legendary Daikatana with John. So no, the level, I was actually wrong. The level I was talking about that I really liked with that tower, just lost it. It's called Against the Wickedly. All of the names of this episode, by the way, are biblical, coming from the Bible, different passages. So Against the Wickedly, and that was one of the 2 levels in this episode that John designed.
Oh, cool.
That makes a lot of sense, and the reason I wanted to bring that up is I think that will be
probably good segue to Sigil.
Yep, it'll come back up because you can start. You really see his style coming back in Sigil in a big way, in a good way. But yeah, the against thee wickedly, I really once, with the exception of he broke the teleporter rule in that one case, where where you usually don't use teleporters multiple for multiple.
Were there more than one on the floor? Was it like a grid?
I mean, visually, it looks like one. I assume that's how he hacked it. To have multiple ones.
But was it one texture wide?
Yeah.
It was. Oh, okay.
Yep, it's all. That's why I was stuck. I was that level probably took me 25 minutes to figure out.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know that's, I kind of accidentally realized there was an elevator on all four sides, because the elevators they blend in. You don't actually see,
right.
They're part of the tower, so you don't really see them. So, maybe there was some signal or clue that I missed, but once you figure that out, it's quite a good level. And it ends with a cyber demon as well in a fairly small room. A cyber demon in a small room is not fun.
It's tough.
It's exciting for a moment, and then you're like, this is just not fair.
It's a slog.
Yeah. So that Flash consumed. The 2 years later is interesting to know, or whatever, almost 2 years later. So that it shows. I think this is really them with advanced level design chops happening. Tech wise, I don't feel like there's anything really different there, right? I mean, this is the same source and everything, so I guess they wouldn't add anything. I played the whole episode, and I'm trying to think. There really wasn't anything. It was just them being clever using the tools they had, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it does really feel like the height of Doom level design. There's just so much going on. And it turning now to Sigil, it is interesting to see that being carried forward. I love that you can kind of slam these things together. I do really remember at the time when I was playing this on a LAN, we used to just download tons of WADs. We were playing on, and I think that's another reason why some of the levels bleed together for me. But we were playing on the IRIX machines, the Silicon Graphics machines. So they were hardware accelerated and really fancy. And we would play deathmatch, and we'd just get a huge number of WADs in a directory and just like have it randomly switch between them. So we saw so many different levels, and you'd have these levels that were just gigantic and terrible for deathmatch, because there was nothing that forced you together at all. You'd just be running around like, I know there's somebody here somewhere. To really kind of clever and interesting level designs that maybe also weren't necessarily good for deathmatch because they had puzzly stuff in it or whatever. But it was a super interesting time. But anyway, I wanted to segue to Sigil because, as you point out, you can definitely see kind of John's ethos and his aesthetic as far as level design coming through very much in Sigil.
Yeah. And the other thing that I'm looking at the top downs for each of those, even though I just played it, to refresh my memory. The other thing I think he did a better job of with Sigil, which you would hope this many years later and this much further in his career that he would improve. Each of the Sigil levels thematically was fairly different from each of the other levels, which I did feel like often wasn't the case with the original Doom. They definitely blend together in your head quite a bit. And, parts of one level feel like they could have fit in parts of another level. It isn't always the case, but for the most part, especially in the first 3 episodes, I feel like there wasn't, other than the boss levels, which tended to be kind of big open levels, there wasn't a lot of clear differentiation. But with Sigil, almost all of them, it's always good to be able to say in a couple words from your memory what you remember about a level, right? Like that's the level with the 3 castles surrounded by lava,
Right, sure.
I don't know if you got to that one, but Cages of the Damned, is that one? Anyway, and then there's the one that's Paths of the Wretchedness, which the names are not as easy to recognize, but I remember what happened in it. That's actually was probably my favorite one so far. I got to Oh no, there's only 8 levels, it looks like. So I got the last level. Was that right?
I think there's a 9th level that's a hidden bonus.
Oh, okay, of course. Well, of course, if he's got to have a secret level. Yes,
Of course.
yeah, it's the secret level, which we didn't play. I think for this whole series, we didn't play one secret level.
Not a single secret level now.
But anyway, yeah, I just thought that he did a good job with that. But the one thing I'll say right off the bat from my notes with, I mean, he is masterfully manipulating the geometry now with this engine.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot more interesting stuff going on. He's having fun with adding a lot of different extra detail and nuance, which sounds funny to say in a game like this with the way that the levels are laid out. Even just the visuals, the composition's more interesting. You know, there's almost never a straight hallway or a straight path. He's always kind of mixing it up. And then, as you mentioned, he has a kind of a macro mechanical theme with the eye triggers, shooting the eye triggers, which in a very Nintendo way, he teaches you very slowly and simply early on in the first couple levels, right? And then throughout the rest of the episode that you're going to be looking for those things, and they're going to be harder and harder to find.
Yeah, I really like that. I was not expecting that in the least. Like, I did not. I had no expectation going in that there was going to be effectively a new mechanic, and especially kind of a new and evolving mechanic. Or I mean, maybe not super evolving, but just kind of like that added, like, where is the thing? I did have some trouble on. There was a level with like a baron in a cage. It might have been the 3rd level. That you came into this very dark area, and it was up above you, and you could sort of get up close and try to shoot it, and you could get into the cage from around the side, but you wanted to deal with it first. I think there was a key in there or something, so you had to go in there. That level I found a little frustrating just because it was so dark in spots that I could not figure out what I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
And that ended up being a thing where there was, I think, a very thin ledge to get out of that area. And I just hadn't seen it because it was so dark. I even at that point started playing with gamma correction and trying to brighten and darken, turn up the contrast and all this stuff just to try to make that room a little bit more parsable. In the end, I was like, okay, this is actually much worse. So let me just put it back to the way it was, and I'll just deal with it. So I don't think I got a lot further than that. But I did really appreciate looking around and wondering where I was going to find another one of these things. I think that might even be the level where you have to find one to open the final door, which is maybe like a big cross-looking red thing. And there's another baron behind that. Then of course you have to deal with. So there's a lot of that trolling going on as well. Aha! You thought you were going to get out. Oh, not so fast. Although I totally cheesed that one. I hid from behind the wall and just like picked it off a little bit at a time with a shotgun. But there's just some good stuff here.
He does a lot of baron backstabbing throughout for sure. That's a good example of that, because that with that red cross, I think the eye was like around, like there's this little passage
around the corner,
cross, kind of a little hidden passage. Secrets are pretty cool, the ones I found. I just think the levels are more interesting, they're more thematic. There's more interesting puzzling going on, and then the pathing specifically. As we talk about, I feel like every time we play some sort of 3D game. So people who listen to the cast know that I love levels that are designed in a way in which you are seeing areas early in a level and returning to those areas, and then knowing that you are progressing by coming back to an area and unlocking something.
Right.
And so you probably didn't. Did you do mission 4? Did you get to the 4th mission? The Paths of Wretchedness.
Can you tell me how it starts, and I can tell you?
So I believe it starts this way, but the main central room has essentially 3 paths that are sort of over lava with a couple different broken pieces that you're running over to avoid taking too much damage. and each one of those paths leads to a key, but they always dump you back into the room where you need the key. And there's these obviously red, blue, and yellow gates essentially that you're opening each time you get a key. And then once you open all three of those gates, you can go through to the sort of last section. Does that ring a bell?
I did not get that. I definitely stopped right before that.
Yeah, so I wanted to mention because this level probably was my favorite level. I haven't played the last level, but and it was because of that. Because you start in this and you have these three paths, and I think you can take any of the three paths you want. There's no ordering to them. Can they always dump you back into the main room where that gate, where the series of three gates is located. And the way he got around that is each of the buttons for the key are outside of the gate. So whichever key you have when you dump into that room, essentially shortcuts you into that room at the end of every one of those three paths. You just unlock the gate, right? And then you can't get through until you get all three of them. And then usually I think there's a teleporter there. Yeah, there's a teleporter that teleports you back to the beginning after you finish each one. So it was a great sort of sense of
yeah, okay.
fully immersing yourself in seeing every section of this level, because you're kind of making these sort of like circles, right, around, and also very much propelling you forward in similar ways that we talked about with Thy Flesh Consumed. But I thought that was my favorite level so far, and again, not having played the last one yet. But he's using the other thing that I love about it is I think that you can really notice good level design when they are squeezing every drop of blood out of what they have at their capability. I was reading, the text file that he has with the WAD when you download it. And, he makes a point in there of really specifically mentioning that he's using all original, like you mentioned, source and textures. And so there's nothing, he's not adding any tricks. He's just really masterfully manipulating what he has at his disposal. We're seeing the same textures that we saw before. We're seeing the same, mechanics and stuff. He's just using them in different ways. And I was really impressed. I couldn't stop playing, to be honest. I think it's a really good homage for the 25th, anniversary. It's showing sort of what makes Doom shine, but then sort of in a modern-ish way, if that makes sense. So,
yeah. It's a total gift, right? I mean, it's
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's free. You just, if you have a copy of Doom, you can just play this, and it's really good. I stopped playing more for time and just like, okay, I'm all frenetic, right? I got to that point where I was starting to feel a little bit too much energy. Like, okay, I need to calm down. I'm going to run myself into a heart attack playing this game, because the pacing of both of them, I just played one after the other, is a lot. It's just a lot. Yeah. And I was a little overwhelmed. And after I had killed yet another Baron, I was like, okay, I need a little rest now. I just need a little break. So
it's punishing. Yeah. And you just go. And the way that some of his enemy placement and enemy spawning pacing is just rough. It's just so like pushing you, which is the point, right? Which is what you'd want to do for Doom, for sure. The two things I want to mention with Sigil for me specifically, that and it's really just a unique case for me because of the way I played for the rest of the podcast, the previous episodes. As you know, I played on Switch because it had come out, so I thought that would be fun to play in a portable. But now that I had to get Steam version to play Sigil, it is like I knew this intellectually, and I said this to myself, and I said, it'll be fine. I'll just play. I'll play with sticks. I'll play on the Switch just because of the novelty of playing mobile or handheld. But it is night and day playing with mouse and keyboard. And not only is it much, much easier, but it's it's just more fun. I gotta say, like Doom is not a console game. It's not tuned for it. They didn't probably do much tuning from an aim assist perspective, or magnetism for the Switch version, if anything at all. So I think, I made my life harder playing it that way. So it was like a breath of fresh air playing Sigil, because I obviously had to play that on PC, and it was just fun playing with the mouse. And then the other thing is, I have this new fancy laptop. I played with, in 4K with hardware rendering, and that was also just a treat. So as far as the adrenaline goes, and I didn't even realize when I first started playing Sigil, I didn't have auto run on, and it was already fast. And then I realized I had it off, and I turned it on, and I couldn't believe how fast you're going when you're just running at full speed.
It's funny because I actually always just hold the shift key. Like I don't turn on auto run. I just always hold the shift key.
Yeah, right.
It's very silly. I don't know why that's the case, but that's the way I like to play. I think I like having my hand exerting pressure all the time. It's just
feels like
feels appropriate, right? To the
accelerator.
Game. Yeah. I'm always just putting my pedal to the metal and stuff like that. I think. It's been a lot of fun to revisit these, and then to have the opportunity to play what's new Doom to me was pretty awesome. I had once played it on, there was an XBLA version a while back. I believe I was at Bethesda then. I might have even had that might have been a free copy for me, and I was like, oh, this is cool. And I checked it out, and I agree. It's just better on a PC. Like, I mean, they've done a fine job making it work with controllers. It's fine. But some of the things that we talked about with respect to modern pacing of games and you had specifically pointed out Halo, having a controller in your hands, slowing the game down just naturally. A lot of that having to do with like precision of stick movement, like what you could expect from a player manipulating sticks. I think really shows why Doom really only works mouse and keyboard. So, or certainly at its very best that way. So, though back in the day, I played it with 2 hands on the keyboard. So,
right.
Which I think a lot of people did. But it's pretty great. Pretty great.
It's good, and I really highly recommend Sigil, and I also recommend people, if they are interested in this kind of stuff, especially a lot of the topics we've talked about, look at the top-down maps for both the original and for Sigil specifically, and you can learn a lot just by seeing how once you play the episodes, how the map flows. It's really telling, and there's a lot to dissect there once you kind of get that sort of perspective, because you're obviously, when you're playing it, you're in it, and you don't really, you see the map when you pull the map up, but a lot of time, Sigil's pretty well designed in that I didn't feel like I used the map very much because I didn't feel like I needed it, which wasn't the case in the previous episodes, in my opinion. I was lost a lot more, and so I think that's another good sign of some sort of evolution in level design. But the top-down maps for Sigil almost look like they look like a modern, top-down map for level design versus the old ones, which were a lot more simplistic and a lot less sort of like, I don't want to say logical, but the flow of the map didn't have as much of a sort of smoothness to it. So anyway, just a side note as I'm looking at these maps right now.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And it's another thing too, that because because these games are so cheap, and because the tools are actually quite good, because it's had a pretty popular, it's been pretty popular for modding basically since the beginning. Not something we talked about a ton either, but making levels or even megawads was a huge thing back in the day, or even like total conversions and things like that. A lot of that stuff that maybe we'll talk about next week. But it's still a game that you can go and teach yourself level design with. You have the game's levels themselves. You have a huge amount of that stuff out there. I'm sure there is a site that has hundreds or thousands of levels on it that I'm sure are rated and things like that. I'm sure there's something like that out there. You have a ton to learn from, and then really quite good tools to make your own levels with. And all that's just kind of amazing too. So John mentions what he used. I think he specifically calls out a particular tool, and I don't remember the name of it because I'm not a level designer. But
I didn't see that.
Yeah, I think he does mention it. I can't remember where. It must be in that README though. Anyway, yeah, it's or maybe I may have read it on the site actually when I downloaded it. So because there's a little bit of a fact there, and I think he might talk about it there. But totally worth if you're somebody who wants to learn a little bit about level design. You have both the master classes here and some pretty good tools to actually just start fiddling around, yourself. So
yeah, sort of where it all began for this genre. And we didn't, it bears mentioning that we didn't even touch multiplayer. So, that's a whole nother sort of category of topics and some aspects that wouldn't even come up in the conversation that we had for single player. So, because there's different level design requirements and what makes a good level and bad level and things like that. So, so that's, we're going to neglect that whole category, unfortunately, but yeah, that's a whole nother thing that Doom brought to the table, started bringing to the table at least.
Yeah. And you can play the game co-op as well. So
yeah, I saw that. We should have done a little bit of that.
Well, there's still time. We can maybe fit a little bit of that in.
That's true.
So, all right, let's take a quick break and then we'll come back and do some of our feedback.
Okay.
Back from the break, we've got a review and a couple emails we're going to read this time. Next time will probably be a little shorter discussion period, so we're going to push off the bulk of it till then, but we do at least want to get a couple in. The first is a review which was put in through the podcast app on Apple devices. I gave it to you to read, sir. Do you have it?
I do. Okay, I didn't. Yes, here we go. Subject, my favorite insight from Nick McCoe. Nick McCoe, and that's how I'm going to say that. So he says, instead of a normal review, I'll post my favorite insight from this podcast so far. In the Pokemon Red and Blue series, the host mentioned that JRPGs of the time had the inherent problem of wanting to reward exploration, but discouraging it with random battles. And that Pokemon solved this issue by turning random battles into gacha-like slot machine where the enemies are the prizes. Overall, I find these podcasts much more insightful than many YouTube video essays, Polygon articles, the few books I've read, and other well-regarded media on game design. Episodes on Nintendo games tend to be the best, probably because they don't know them that well and can notice design decisions, which I take for granted as I played them all 10 years ago. Thank you, Nick. Appreciate the insight, and I love that take on the review to give us a specific memory of yours from one of the.
I like that a lot too, because we're reading it 2 weeks after we said, okay, no more Pokemon stuff.
Right. They always find a way to sneak it back in.
Find a way.
I have the other thing I want to mention with Nick's specific insight. That was also a revelation for me.
Yeah. I know. Yeah.
I don't remember which one of us said it, but
I think it was you. Yeah, it was you. I remember at the time thinking, "Oh, that was actually quite good."
Yeah,
I so rarely think that about you that it stood out.
Right, I heard that coming. I just we both, had admitted on the podcast when we did the Pokemon series that neither of us were really Pokemon players, and so it definitely opened my eyes to as we've spent now many hours and emails and going very deep into the Pokemon. But that particular insight was surprising to me too, where there's I don't want to say that I always sort of like sloughed it off and said, Pokemon, it was just a thing I missed. And it can't be that, innovative and that, well-designed, but it is. I mean, there's some really revelatory things in there that really do make it timeless, as it has deserved to be all this time, and with even a new one still coming out right in next month or something, and it's as we've said, it's the biggest franchise out there. So it's good for good
a
reason.
Genuine phenomenon. 2-3 years ago with Pokemon Go.
They're still.
I mean, just a huge, still a big deal, and it's still updated. But I just meant the way that dominated the culture. Like you would see stuff on the news about Pokemon Go.
Yeah.
It's just like, what?
Yeah.
That is a rare thing. And to the other part about Nintendo games, my first Nintendo console was a GameCube, although I had played some Nintendo 64 titles. I think that there's two parts of that really. One is I think that certainly coming to them fresh, we can definitely avoid falling into the trap of this is just the way it is or whatever, just not even seeing the design decisions are being made because you're so familiar with it. But also I want to say we often pick them obviously because they are such exemplars of good design, that the design's often quite clear. It's very obvious what problems they're trying to solve or address, in order to create the experience that they are. So they're also just really good models, for design. So that's another reason. Obviously, there's so many classics in the sort of Nintendo catalog that it's definitely fun to return to them again and again. So.
Agreed.
So anyway, okay. Well, let me thank you, Nick Mecco. I'm going to say it that way, just to be contrary.
Okay.
This next bit we have is an email from South America.
Cool.
Sent to devgameclub@gmail.com. The subject is Doomed Greetings from South America from JC Porcel. Which is Juan Carlos Porcel. Hello, Brett and Tim. My name is Juan Carlos, JC for short. I'm a wannabe serious game dev from Bolivia in South America, one of the 2 ridiculous banana countries that are currently burning away in the Amazon because we think setting fire to our own forest is a great way to make room for more cows. In any case, there's a little bit of political speak there for you. I write to you for several reasons. First of all, to let you know I'm a huge fan of your podcast. It was probably the first game dev related podcast I listened to, and after listening to a couple others, it's still my favorite by far. Secondly, to thank you for all the invaluable information you provide to all aspiring developers, especially to those of us who live in remote, pre-civilized places where game development is a completely unknown concept. Common knowledge is that cartoons and comics are for children and video games are for children who also want to waste their lives. So something like a game design course, let alone a degree in game development, is something so futuristic it falls into the joke category. Luckily, the internet came to our rescue. We are without any doubt very lucky that nowadays there are 10 million different online courses to learn every possible language and engine one might want, but most of them are only about learning how to use the tools, not how to make a game. And even after going through a couple of actual game design books, I still feel like listening to you guys is just as valuable as learning about all the lenses in all the books about them. It's through listening to your experiences and opinions that many things I've read about really start to make sense. I haven't yet listened to all your episodes. I'm about 80% through, but I'm quite sure if I had started listening before actually trying to make a game, it would have saved me a lot of trial and error. Me and my brother actually released the game about 1.5 years ago, and I'll put this in the show notes, which is coincidentally a 2D parody of Doom. And now that I listen to the Dev Game Club in every episode, there's always some bit of information that makes me think, oh man, we could have really used this 2 years ago. I've been wanting to write to you for a long time, but since you are now playing through Doom, it seemed like it was about time. I would be honored if you would give our game a try. Now that you're freshly done or almost done with Doom, you'll probably get all the references and jokes we put into our game. Promise it will at least give you a chuckle or two. And there's a trailer and a download page, and I will put that out there in the show notes. I have not had a chance to play it, although I did watch the video, and it is very entertaining.
What's it called?
It's called Mini Doom 2. It's sort of like a super crate box 2D, jumping around kind of thing, but with all Doom art, cartoony kind of Doom art with the Doom guy that you're controlling. It's the art's quite good.
That's awesome.
It looks like it plays really well too, I have to say. So I do look forward to it. Thirdly, I had a couple questions for the podcast. Did you have any game that inspired you despite not actually playing it too much or at all? I asked this because we made our parody of Doom and we didn't even finish the first game. We just went through endless wikis and forums to gather information and inspiration. We only had the shareware version back in those days. We didn't even know there was a complete Doom. The internet had not arrived to South America, and there weren't any game stores for PC games around. But despite not actually playing the game, the few levels we had and the images, sounds, and the ideas stayed with us along the years. Up until now, I haven't finished the first Doom, and I still think it's among the coolest things in existence. And another question, do you have any other good video game dev recommendations? Because there are so many podcasts about game design, it's always about tabletop. There are so few focused on video games, and most are in a many years-long hiatus. Anyway, so in summary, thanks for the podcast. You guys are the teachers we never had and probably never will, since we live in a wannabe socialist godforsaken pseudo-country, which is currently literally on fire. Bye, Juan Carlos Porcel, which he notes is his real name. Yes, anyway, I will put out those links. How about that? How about a game that you've not played much or at all? That's a hard one for me, for sure.
Well, yeah, for you, it's like impossible. The irony of that question for me is before we started the podcast, whatever, 3.5. How long was it?
2.5.
2.5 years? Half? No, dude. I think
it's really 3.5. Oh my God, that's terrible.
I think it's 3.5. Before the podcast, I would have had lots of those of answers. Things like Pokemon, things like Pokemon is a good example because before the podcast, because I had lots of opinions and I had started playing a couple of them, and we would talk about them a lot, around the water cooler and stuff. But I, definitely never had finished them. Barely played any of them. The other one is Final Fantasy. That's another one that I would have said. And really JRPGs in general, as I think we've talked about on the podcast quite a bit. I'm not the JRPG guy of the duo. And so they're all a bit of a mystery to me still. And the only one I've ever sort of finished, even that's a debatable.
Yeah, there's a little asterisk in the record book on that one.
Is 9 for the podcast. So, but ones that we haven't played, why don't you go and I'll think see if I can think of one.
Yeah, I think the game for me that has inspired me the most in terms of how I think about building games has been The Sims, which is not a game I've played a lot of.
Yeah, that's a good answer, yeah.
Yeah, but there's a lot about it that I knew from reading articles at the time. Game Developer magazine, in particular, had great information in it about sort of their approach. And, so I think that's a game that I've never played a ton. I have played some of The Sims, but even more recent editions of The Sims, I have really enjoyed hearing what they've done to grow what the game can be.
Yeah.
And I can't remember, there was a video I watched. I think it's Richard Evans about The Sims probably 3, and he actually concretized something that I had thought for a long time about how to make, gameplay systems for games. And it was The Sims 3, and it was Richard Evans. He really concretized something for me about how I think about making games in terms of making it of little particles of game. So I'm always very much about giving sort of the right level of granularity to designers to put together stuff that turns into gameplay. And he had kind of come up with a way to describe that just really resonated with me. So I think that is a game series that has actually impacted me for a long time, despite the fact I only ever played a little bit of the first one.
Yeah.
So that would be mine.
Yeah, Sims is a good one. I think especially because Will Wright was so prolific in talking about the way that he thought about things, not even just The Sims, but his other games as well. And so I never was really much for his games as a fan or as a player. But the way that he talked about systems and interacting systems, and as you've mentioned on the podcast a few times, sort of the underlying sort of AI constructs that they would use to sort of think differently about how AI should be constructed, I guess, too, the way that, the mental mapping of it, if you will. So those were always fascinating talks. And I will admit, which is maybe through some great circumstance, Juan Carlos gets to go to GDC someday, but that's something that you do get from GDC is to have people really, and there's a lot of online GDC that you can get to. So I definitely recommend going back and listening to a lot of that stuff. But and you get a lot from it, even if you haven't played the game, because game developers tend to talk in similar ways and understand each other generally. So even if they're deconstructing things, you can get a lot from, and you haven't played their game, you can get a lot from what they're talking about. I haven't come up with another good answer, I will admit.
Well, I want to give them to a resource that I think is quite good, and that is Mark Brown's series. I think that's his name. Mark Brown, the Game Maker's Toolkit. That's a YouTube series that I think is excellent. It's been going for quite a while, so there's great stuff in it on any number of topics. So it's a I think he is actually came to it from journalism, so I don't know that he's necessarily a practitioner, but I do think the way he analyzes what's going on in games is immensely helpful. So that might be a good resource for you. There are many videos. There was a point where I was just like watching one every other day or so, trying to catch up, but there's so many of them. He's been doing them for years. So a lot of really great stuff in there. So I would recommend that as an online resource for you.
The other one that again is a bit of a cheating answer because we did play it on the podcast, but before the podcast, I definitely would have answered this as well. And that was GTA.
That's a good point.
3 specifically. And I hadn't played the game for various reasons, but it was definitely such an influential game on the industry and on developers and we would talk so much about it, and it influenced us from a world building perspective and systemic perspective and motivation perspective when it comes to missions and things like that. It definitely influenced me for sure, even though I hadn't played, almost, just very little, because it would just always be talked about. Right. And I would have friends and stuff who would kind of dissect it for me too. So that would be another answer, even though we did play it on the podcast. And, but I didn't play it, up until then, fully. So yeah,
cool.
Good one.
Good long one. Maybe we'll just do one more then. Okay, I forgot how long that was going to be. Yeah, go ahead and give me the first email. This one takes me to task, so I thought I would let you read that.
Oh, okay. Did he have a second answer or second question that I forgot?
The second question was about other resources.
Oh, yeah. Okay, got it. Okay, so yeah, here we have the subject is 2600 versus Apple II from Matt Accurate. I
don't know. I hope you're being accurate.
Okay, well, that's well done. Well, I'll keep it in the French side of it. Accurate is how I'm going to pronounce it, but he's going to tell us after this, I'm sure. I'm listening to episode 176. You're calling an Atari 2600 as an Apple II with the top 12K or 16K or whatever lopped off. That's a quote. Yeah. That's what Brett said, apparently. I love it. Or whatever lopped off. They're not in the same league. The 2600 uses a 6507, which has only 8K address space and no interrupts, as well as potentially other limitations. From Wikipedia, he quotes Wikipedia to school you. It has 128 bytes of RAM and actually has even one fewer address line, so has 4K addressable, as opposed to Apple II's starting with 4K of RAM up to 48K in the first rev. There you go.
Yes. Mia culpa, mia maxima culpa. Yes. Even when I said it, I was like, I know this is not entirely on. I mean, I knew they were sort of in the family of chipsets. Like I know it was not like a focus of anything we were talking about. It was just a throwaway, whatever. I've read Racing the Beam. Like I should know this stuff a little bit better than I do off the top of my head. But it's just like that off the cuff nature. I was just making a throwaway humorous remark. I thought at the time. Matt actually works at Apple, I believe. So.
Snap! There you go.
Yeah. So if
good for you, Matt.
Yeah, he sent another one too, which was about the floppies and the write protection versus. Because I said it was for copy protection, but it just meant you couldn't write.
It was right. No, I remember that.
At the time, I was like, I know I'm not saying this the right way. Yeah. It's like, this stuff is so long ago, and I never programmed professionally on any of these machines, so a lot of the details are pretty lost, and I'm just kind of like, I vaguely know. Oh, right, it's sort of a similar chipset. It's not exactly the same. A lot of the instructions are the same, and stuff like that. But yeah. And a lot of this stuff is stuff that people probably wouldn't care about.
Matt does.
Anyway, and Matt does. A lot of people, I said. But Matt does, yes.
You're old, but you're not that old. Is it kind of what you're saying? I think, right? Is that how I'm interpreting? No. Okay.
No, I'm just on my 50th career.
Okay, right. We both messed up that floppy thing. I think, that's a good call out that we were interchanging, as we often use the wrong terms for things that people get mad at us, like combos. Copy protection versus write protection and things like that. That's a good point. Here's the quote again, folks. An Apple II with the top 12K or 16K or whatever lopped off. That's as good as Chris Hecker's infamous Wii is just two GameCubes duct taped together that he had to retract.
That we both immediately quoting it when you're like, Chris Hecker's quote about, two GameCubes. It was pretty funny.
Game developer jokes.
Again, mea culpa.
It's a good way to go out on this episode. So thanks for letting me end on that one.
Yeah, no problem. I think I had one that was to take you to task, though. So I'll do that good.
Next time.
Is that true? No, it's not. Dang. So send your hate mail about Tim to deadgameclub@gmail.com so I can read it next week. You want to tell the folks at home what we're gonna play for next week?
Yeah, the Doom saga continues. We're going to play Doom some of as a bonus episode, Doom 2016, the sort of reboot, done by id under the Bethesda helm. Yeah, and so you have played this.
I have. I've gotten the trophy, the platinum trophy.
Oh wow! Okay, well that means you must have had to have played on Nightmare or whatever, right?
Yes, you have to beat the first level on Nightmare.
Wow. Okay. Cool.
But whenever you die, you can't. There's no saves, so you have to play the whole thing in one go.
Oh wow!
On
cool.
Nightmare, that's
almost like a speed run or something.
It's ridiculous. It is so hard. Yeah, but I did it.
And I'm sad to say that I had missed that one somehow. Just kind of didn't make it on the top of my playlist when it had come out. So I actually didn't play that one. So I'm actually looking forward to at least playing some of it. Maybe it'll get its hooks into me like Prey did, and I'll play all of it. But yeah, so we're going to play some of that for the next bonus episode, of course, to have some good comparisons between the old and new, as we often do for these. Yeah. So yeah, I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I'm really interested to hear what you think of some of the more modern techniques that they're using to make the game feel propulsive, because it is. I mean, it's also on PC, but it's definitely more designed with a controller in mind, I think. So yeah, be interesting. It'd be very interesting to hear your thoughts.
Well, I'll probably play on a PC.
Yeah.
Do you think I should?
You
play
might want to play it with a controller. Yeah, really? You might. Yeah,
that sounds blasphemous.
Pretty good. I mean, I don't know, because I only played it with a controller.
You played on PlayStation.
Yeah, I played it on PlayStation 4, so I can't honestly compare.
Not sure. Okay, I'll have to think about that. That's an important decision for me to make. But,
yeah, I agree.
I mean, I often do, play Witcher 3 with a controller on PC the whole time. So, the shooters specifically, I have a hard time doing that, but we'll see. Yeah, maybe I'll try both and I'll report back.
Okay. Yeah, it'd be interesting to hear what you think. But yeah, it'll be an interesting discussion, I think. And I will go back and play a little bit of maybe the first couple of levels or something like that, just to refamiliarize myself. A lot to talk about there, I think. So that should be a fairly meaty and interesting discussion. And we will continue with the emails. We have quite a few left, a couple of long ones in here too. So it should be a good time. And maybe we can find some time to deathmatch or something on GZ Doom.
Oh yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah. We'll see. I don't know how that would stand up to cross country lag, but we'll see. I'm just trying to get my excuses in early in case you kill me a bunch of times. It'll be like, because of my ping.
Yeah, you're peppering in. Yeah, I don't know. It's Doom. It's not that taxing.
Yeah. Still a long ways to go. So anyway, enough about that. In the meantime, you'll be able to find the podcast on the internet at devgameclub.com or on Twitter at devgameclub, where you can also find my co-host at
Tim Longo Jr. with the JR at the end.
And, of course, we look forward to any more emails at devgameclub@gmail.com. God, I'm tired. Anyway, in the meantime, have fun playing games this week, and good night.
Good night.
It sounds what? Does it sound good?
I don't know why I said okay. I'm sorry.
Okay. What? Okay.